efficiently. And core training is one of the best places to start. Really understanding how to build your toolbox with some good strategies for core training is going to help them be successful. It's going to be able to reach towards the sky. The goal is not necessarily flattening the back out, but maintaining a neutral position. We can do this at a very low level by bringing the knees up, making sure that they're not out too far this way, creating too much tension on the anterior chain. It's meant to hold it in a good position of rest, toes pointing up in a dorsiflex position, and then start to teach them the timing. We can teach them the timing with the same side going out. So right arm, right leg extending, just until it's right above the ground. The goal is for nothing here to change. Okay, we come back in, and we make sure it's controlled. Then we would go to the other side. Very simple exercise, but you've got to start somewhere to getting that body to really trust the positioning. Then we're going to go contralateral. This is going to start sequencing that opposite arm and opposite leg in a very spine-supported, low stability demand way. So especially if you've got clients that are really needing to be challenged at a lower level to start with, or just being warmed up, this is a great way to do it. Now we can extend the legs. And again, if they've got the right mobility here, we can challenge it and go contralateral. And again, the goal is for nothing here to change. You can even give them some tactile cueing so that nothing there changes and they maintain that stability. The tendency is they start to lose position through the reps, and you want to make sure they maintain that position as they're going through the dead bug exercise. Okay? Go ahead and relax. I'm talking so much, I'm just having to hold it forever, right? So as we go through this, the ones that were here this morning, this is going to be one that they saw, but when I tell you it's a money exercise, it means it works with 80% of the people, 80% of the time. And so when you're talking about being able to get some good trust with the pelvis, and a lot of times people they think they have tight hamstrings, they're limited in being able to raise the leg up very high. It's because it's the core sequencing that the body doesn't trust. And we've got to get them to feel that again. It's about getting feel back, making the body aware of it. So when we come in here, we're going to take this and we're going to bring the arms in a straight arm position, about 45 degrees, about halfway down. He's going to raise the leg. He's going to lower the leg. And then he's going to bring it back. Just enough to release some of that tension. So we engage, raise the leg, lower the leg, and then bring it back. We're engaging the core sequencing. We're engaging the core, especially when you're in this position back here, anchoring from this direction. It's pulling along that line so that you can really feel that. So if you were up high, you wouldn't get the same feeling as you are straight back here, to where it's really pulling along the spine. So it really helps to engage that feeling and that awareness. It's all about getting, again, the body to trust that pelvic positioning. So that's the core engagement leg raise. Really key here, if you see them to really, if they really start to arch, then make sure there's not too much tension on the band, and you may put like a foam roll underneath and just shorten the distance a little bit. But this one's a really great one. It's a core exercise, but it also helps with hip mobility and range of motion. Okay? Now the next one is we're going to show you what we call an active leg lower. If they have the ability to come and get into a position where one is up and he's holding it on his own, we're going to start getting a little bit more of an advanced way of saying, I'm going to challenge the core and the eccentric movement of the opposite leg. So he's going to bring this leg up. And if he can maintain that good pelvic positioning by engaging the muscles around that pelvis and lower the leg slowly while this one stays in place, this is really going to help, again, the body trust that pelvic position. As they go through this, again, it's going to be a challenge for the core, and I like the sagittal plane, mainly going up and down. And then we're also going to challenge it coming out to the side. So if you're in this position, he's just going to come out about 45 degrees. This leg stays in place, This really challenges the eccentric of the adductors and then bringing it back in. That's a common weakness, not only in the hip area, but also for the body to stabilize the pelvis, which really is involved in the core. So we want to make sure and challenge it, not only going up and down in sagittal plane, but we're going to bring it out in the frontal plane, where a lot of people are really challenged to control that. So that gives you a great option there. So here's what I want you to do. We've got plenty of bands. We use a leg lock to do this. Now the leg lock bridge that we use, we start with marching. So if he brings his hips up and he marches his feet, it allows him to find his best foot position where he feels really grounded and stable. And rather than me tell them, go out too far or too close, he finds their best position. Now he's going to bring himself into a leg lock. And when he comes into this position, you want to make sure that the upper leg is at least past 90 degrees. If you do that with this hip inflection and this hip extension, it helps to limit movement of the lumbar, of the low back. So now we know all the work's going to come from the hips to really help support getting that position all the way into extension. He's pressing through the heel to make sure he helps engage the posterior chain. Now this is a good one for the core because it's teaching the body on a supported spine position and then coming up into a bridge, how to get into a nice neutral position where the knee, the hip, and the shoulder work together. We're going to take this into other movements, into stacked and standing, but we want to make sure they can do this very effectively. And watch this knee right here. We want to make sure the knee stays in neutral with the hip. If you see it pulling out or dropping out, then you can actually take a band. Okay. And just very lightly pull him into his mistake. If you exaggerate the mistake, it helps bring it up to his level of awareness. I'm not pulling really hard. I'm only giving it some light feedback so he can feel it. That's much more effective than me going, don't let that knee go out, don't let that knee go out, if I'm using my voice. I'm getting him to feel it more, okay? And you could do the same thing. If he was collapsing inward, we would just pull it the other direction. Now, that's the leg lock bridge. Now, a more advanced, especially for coming into a position. You want the other leg? I keep thinking on the same side. So extended here, nice flat foot position. Make sure the strap, you're using the strap to go around. These are really great bands, but if you put the round part on here, sometimes it rolls off. So use that strap. And again, he's going to press through the heel. Make sure he's really pressing through to drive that hip up. And he's giving himself some of that resistance. So he's really got to drive up through that position and then lower it under control. Okay? So that's going to be a little bit more advanced. You take that, but notice, again, he's in a flexion position on one side, going through extension on the opposite side. Very much like gait, that reciprocal action when we're walking and running. So we're trying to encourage that same amount of control so we can take that into the other movements. So what I want you guys to do is very quickly, we're going to go through the leg lock bridge. Okay, the first movement that we did that's up at the top. So this is what we call a trunk stability rotation. The goal here is actually working on the spiraling from the bottom up, from the spine. A lot of people think that this is just an ab exercise, going back and forth, back and forth. If we do this right, we can really get some great upper body work to stabilize the scapula. Actually, your shoulder blades in the back can really focus on stabilizing and pulling down, meaning the back is going to pull down. Don't squeeze them together, because that's going to put them in a bad position here. So when we're on the ground, we can really start focusing on pulling those shoulder blades down. Notice that when he rotates this direction, he's only going to go about 45 degrees. The goal is not getting to the ground. The goal is making sure that the shoulder blades and the shoulders stay on the ground. Notice, look at this palm is up. That way, he's not pressing behind him to get false stability. Everything has to come from the center, under control. I would much rather them go only about 45 degrees. They go all the way to the ground. It's harder to stop and come back, and stop and come back. And notice, every time he crosses in the middle, he changes his hand position, so that he's always going towards the palm downside. And it's almost like throwing a ball. Think about throwing a ball. The back hand is more in a PNF pattern or a natural pattern, and it's not pressing down, getting false stability. Now we can advance this by coming into a leg extended position, but you want to be very careful. Make sure your client is ready for this. And again, this is a shift that if we're going together, the low back is going to rotate with the pelvis, and the movement should come spiraling up through the mid-back of the thoracic spine. Really working on good stability. He's got to work really hard with this extended position to control that and bring it back under control. I would much rather do that than worry about going fast and going towards the ground. And that's common for a lot of people to do, or our clients to do, because they've done it in different programs. This is going to get much better results, okay? So let's try it really quick. We're going to try it with a knee bent position. You can grab, are in almost like on railroad tracks, on train tracks. They're not like this. When they do this, it opens up underneath the arm where the lats are the strongest connection of packing the shoulder to your torso. When they go like this, they've already created a weak point. That's a weak link. I want them to be able to pack the shoulders and make sure they don't get into a bad position. So you'll notice he's going to do this naturally right away. Pack the shoulders and stay on railroad tracks here. And then he's going to be hip width apart with his feet. In the pelvic positioning, when you go prone, face down, it's natural for the body to almost want to dump the pelvis. You really have to get them to pull their belly button and their drawstrings together. Give them some kind of cue, because it feels exaggerated to them, but it maintains the stacking position of the rib cage right over the pelvis, but in this prone position. Notice his feet are digging in and the toes are pulled towards the shins. That allows him to create positive compression. If he points the toes, he's not going to be able to create that tension that he needs. A lot of our clients think that they're weak, and they just don't have a point of tension where it's really driving the compression along the spine and through the hips to give them a much stronger position. So this is going to be really important. And go ahead and come down. The other thing here is, I'm not saying having a plank challenge is wrong, but if you really want to be more effective, change the position so they have to re-engage and engage and change the base of support. Because holding a plank for a really long time, we know the local stabilizers, the smaller muscles that are going to help stabilize the position and hold posture, start to fatigue. And all of a sudden, the big muscles and the prime movers have to start kicking in and doing the job of the stabilizers. That's not very efficient. That's going to take away from other movements when we start challenging them in standing positions and challenging them in different ways. So a better way to do it is actually changing their base of support. And that's why we see a lot of, we're going to lift a leg or lift an arm or even go contralateral, is because that re-engages and engages and gives the body a chance to feel that change in the base of support. That's a better technique for our clients if you're going to take them through challenging them over time. So we'll give them an example of coming in here, and then we're going to just simply raise a leg about just that high off the ground, just bringing the toe up. Notice, he didn't lose position here. Our clients have a bad habit of when we tell them to raise a leg, they raise the leg too high, going straight up, and they immediately dump the pelvis. They lose pelvic positioning, they lose their spine in neutral because they're raising it too high. You only have to raise it that far off the ground to challenge it, okay? Same way if you're going to raise an arm. You don't have to reach all the way out. You're simply unweighting a position to where you're using an arm and bringing it back. You don't have to reach way out to where it's too much and they think it's about raising it really high. It's about challenging that base of support. Okay? Go ahead and relax. Now, when we think about some of the side plank positions, again, there's ways of helping them be successful and just get into good alignment. I'm going to get him into a side plank, and then I'm going to use a challenge with a band that's very light resistance, but gives them a little feedback where they're a little bit more vulnerable. So he's going to get into a split foot position to where the top leg is in front, okay? And then he's going to bring himself up into a side plank. Notice his neck is in a good position. He's not losing his head position. He's nice and even here. He's got a good perpendicular pelvis to the ground. That's a common mistake, is them starting to turn that. And we can challenge that again by even just rotating onto two arms again, coming to a prone plank, and very carefully coming onto the other side, or coming back. Now if we want to challenge it, I can have him grab a band to where now I'm pulling him into a position to where he has to simply bring his hand, elbow back into a row, and not let that pull him forward into a position. So now we're challenging. He's not only challenged in the frontal plane where he's holding it in a side plank, we're now challenging him sagittally as well. And really in a transverse where we're hitting more planes of motion by challenging it with a little bit of a pull. Okay, go ahead and relax. That was a long time for him. He's sitting there going, please, just come back down. All right? So what I want you to do is I'm going to walk you through and just remind you guys of taking it through each one of these steps, because then we're going to start doing a couple of things together. Okay, so go back more with every step. We may start for a few sessions and only do the walkouts, and then we walk it back in. But that feedback of getting them to feel that every time they take a step with their hands really does help them feel the positioning and engage, especially around the shoulders and where some of them may not feel as strong. Now he can challenge that by taking a couple of steps out to the side. Absolutely. So if you stack the feet and then come back, that's a 3-point stance. He has to control his shoulders and then come back. And then he just walks it back up. We're challenging the steps without even putting a push-up in yet. And now, if he comes back out, and eventually you may ask him just to do one, but when they can do one good one after feeling engaged, that's a great success for a lot of people. But this is also just really good in order to get them to really do a lot of good work too. So you do that, we can take some steps, and you can even add a push-up in between when they're ready. Okay? So that's what we want to stay nice and tight, get a good push-up position, and notice when Henrik drives the knee up, it just goes to about the waistline. It never goes above the belly button. The common mistake here is they try to drive it too high, and then they lose their back position. So the whole goal here is to drive that knee and stop right here at the waistline. So you're challenging your trunk and your core stability with a driving the lower leg. That's what mountain climbers are all about. If you need to elevate the surface, maybe on a step, that's okay. But the goal is to be able to drive that, and don't drive it out to the side where you're swinging the leg out. Out here, you want to keep it and drive it and use that good mobility to drive it straight up. And make sure nothing here changes every time you go through each rep. Okay? Now, we can do this to where we start and we just march it out. And then we can challenge it a little bit higher level where we start with one up, and then we switch. 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 And we can do a double. Switch, switch. Go 2. Switch, switch. Good job. And we go up to maybe 3 and finish on the opposite side. But what we're going to do is we're going to get into position. We're going to march out just a couple of good mountain climbers. And then together, we're going to work on a couple of switches. Right here, he puts the band underneath his leg, and then now he can hold this in each hand. Now the goal here again is there's common mistakes when we do bird dogs or quadrupeds. Is we want to make sure we start with just the legs first, and then with one leg, make sure they're good there and they know what to do. He's going to extend, and notice, same thing with the plank, nothing here changes. Our clients think higher is better, and the minute they go too high, they dump the pelvis again. And that's not what we're looking for. It's not about making it a straight line across either. I'm looking for the line between his shoulder, his hip, his knee, and his ankle. And especially if they've got a long arm position, it's going to be at this angle. It's not going to be a perfect tabletop. That's what true alignment is. And we don't want them reaching any higher and losing a good position here. Okay? Once he's good there, then we can add in the arm position and just test the arm first. And again, same thing. It's not about getting real high, because then they tend to arch too much here at the back. We want to make sure nothing between the shoulders and the hips change. And so when he tests out the arm, now we can put it together for a good diagonal. And that's a great way to piece it together and teach them and make sure they're not making any common mistakes. Okay? All right. So when we go to this one, again, we're setting ourselves up to get some good feel, and we're going to start taking this position into some of the crawling and the crab walks. So let's take just a moment. Let's try the bird dog and quadruped really quick, at least with one of your partners, and then we're going to go right into the crawling, where we're using all points down, then getting into bringing the knees up, which is a 4-point stance. And then we're going to add some band resistance to give them feedback, okay? And so what we're going to do here is notice how Henrik has his hands underneath his shoulders. His knees are actually just slightly in front of the hips. He digs the feet in to get a really good position so that when he drives through the feet in the foot position, he can lift the knees up. And then the first step is simply holding this position. And make sure nothing changes here. He's got a good position through the crawling position, and then he can come back down. You could do that for static holds and be able to work them up into just holding that position. And then as soon as you get to that point, what I want you to do is notice how these have some good big loops. We can put these around the shoulders. Okay, it's around the side. Okay. Notice, once he gets them on the shoulders, I'm going to crisscross. That keeps it on the shoulders without it sliding off. So that crisscross right here is going to help you guys. And when he gets into position, I'm going to bring this right above his hips. That way, if he starts to raise up and pop up, it gives him feedback. It gives the emphasis of him driving with his legs forward, and it relieves some of the stress on the upper arms as we walk through this with resistance. So he's going to go. Short steps driving through. This helps really drive, it creates compression through the spine, which helps them maintain stability, and then he's going to come back. And again, I'm walking with him so it maintains the tension. It's not getting lighter, it's staying the same. Okay? Once they feel good there, we're simply going to use some taps. And what I mean by that is as he crawls, he's basically going to, if he can, bring his opposite hand to his opposite ankle. Control and tap and go. Control, tap, and go. So now he's staying up a little bit longer on 2 points, maintaining that nice core positioning. Okay? So this is what we're thinking. So this is what we're going to do. We'll go and just get into the quad position. We'll use a little bit of resistance, and then we'll go and do the taps. And unfortunately, in order to get through the next couple of days, just have one partner through this, and then we'll switch partners when we go to the next section. Okay? So go ahead. half-kneeling positions, the first thing is we need to get into a good half-kneeling position. So what we mean by this is we're going to start with the knee down. All your weight should be in the back knee. The ankle should be right underneath the front knee, and it's about hip width apart. The back leg is straight back, and point the toe, because we really want to focus on taking the ankle out of it and the knee out of it. So the foot is relaxed, it's not digging in, because that kind of pitches people forward, and I really want the work to come from around the hip and through the torso. Now when they're in a good position here, we can start challenging it with the band. And this is a great way to go through a few different types of challenges and PNF patterns. The first one, Pellet Press, is going to be one where I can just be the resistance right here to the side. So he's on a very narrow base. So I'm not going to be yanking really hard because it's going to pull him right off his base of support. But what he can do is he can go out extended, nice and controlled, and bring it right back to the chest. And simply focusing on really challenging that from the frontal plane. Now he can go to there and slowly bring it overhead. Notice how I'm working with him as his partner. So that he can bring overhead, come back down, and bring it in. So it's using that extended lever arm to really challenge that and put him through some challenging movements. So he's going to go straight out, then he's going to go up, and then he's going to bring it back down and in. Okay? So this is just going to allow him to really get challenged. And notice I'm on the side of the forward leg that's forward. I'm pulling from that side, on the contralateral side, because it's a little bit easier to be on that forward leg part versus on this side where the medial side is really pulling him to the open side. I want to be on the outside of that forward leg to help them be successful. Okay? Now, we've got, that's called the Pellet Press. Now we're going to show you some chops and lifts. Now the chops and lifts, we want to be able to bring to the chest and finish right in front of the opposite hip. So if I'm standing in the right position, this band is going to go right along this trail arm when he finishes. So I can even adjust myself to go right along that line. Okay, and he brings it right back up and chops right to the open side so he can finish. If he was doing the other way, his leg would be blocking him. Okay, so we always want to chop to the open side. And then, go ahead. Now we can do a lift. When we do the lift, we want to make sure and lift to where he's going to finish right above and in front of the shoulder. And then bring it back down. Again, from this back pocket at a little bit of an angle. Notice where the finish point is for that hand. Okay? Right above the shoulder, just in front of the shoulder. Imagine there's glass on both sides, and when I finish, I'm not trying to break the glass. I never want to go past the wall on this side or the wall on this side when you're going towards that direction. Okay? So let's try that. We're going to get into a good half kneeling. And if you're in good half kneeling, he's stacked, he's really tall here. I can press on him. He feels solid all the way to the ground. Okay, that's where you want to start. Then you can do the column press. So start here, do the overhead, and then work on your chops and lifts. Great PNF diagonal pattern, and we can work our way through this. Okay, let's go ahead and give those a try. I'm going to take you through this next couple because I want to be able to show you as we're going through the setup on this. Is the half get up is a great core exercise, mainly because you're transitioning from being down on the ground, getting a good position here where you're going to drive through the heel. This foot's going to be in an athletic position, just a little bit out to the side. He's got his arm out at about 45 degrees. He's going to balance a shoe on his knuckle. This forces him to maintain a neutral position, punching the knuckles to the sky, and not lose that position. If you guys try this when you get back, This is cheating. Just so you know. Whoa. All right, so balance it. So he has to have a lot of control to be able to do this with the shoe coming up. He's going to drive through the heel, and he's going to really engage the core by driving through the hip first. You've got to drive through the hip first to create that stability and create that drive from the ground. And he's going to come up onto his elbow. Reaching straight up under control. He comes up where he's always got his eye on the shoe, and he's going to come up to his hand. Notice he reaches back, turns his fingers back slightly. And that kind of control forces them to really focus on the great core control. He's going to bring it back down to his elbow, and then down to the ground. And it's a reverse roll back down, but you've really got to use the core to have control. He's not just letting gravity pull him down. He's making sure that he's driving through his heel. He's using that nice rolling up and rolling back down to emphasize that. So if you've got some people that work with kettlebells around you, you only have to go up to your hand position, seated, to get a lot of great work out of this. You don't have to go all the way up to standing to do that. So we use this a lot as a core exercise with a lot of our clients and our athletes. Okay, does that make sense? All right, very cool. We're just going to show you really quick, because deadlifts are a common exercise, but people don't really think of it as a core exercise, right? Am I here? Okay, I'm out of time. The hip hinge itself helps to maintain a neutral spine. If you do it appropriately, it loads the posterior chain, but it loads it in a way that the hips reach back. Shins stay very vertical, but you're loading the posterior chain, and the goal is to keep the shoulders above the hips above the knees, and really focus on being able to drive through. And if you place the weight underneath the body versus getting it out in front, it really focuses on great core control and hip control coming back up to speed. Okay? And guys, I thank you guys so much. This was my last session, and